I'm grateful for your encouragement and kind words about this 5-week sermon series, this journey through James we've been taking together. Today is the 4th of 5 Sundays that we'll be discussing this rather small book of the New Testament, in which the words we read on these pages are just jam-packed with lessons for faithful living. First week, we were encouraged to live out our faith, to be doers of the word and not just hearers only. The second week, James reminded us not to show favoritism to others, especially to the rich, to the exclusion of the poor. James says that is dangerous to our faith and to our witness. James is clear that unless we are caring for the poor, the widow, the orphan, then our spiritual life is rather meaningless. Last week, James had quite a few things to say about the tongue and how it so often gets us into trouble. Every one of us has a testimony, I'm sure, of a time when our words, to our own horror, inflicted such pain upon another person. Or perhaps how words, maybe spoken many years ago, still sting. And a good many of you told me of the times when you had your own bless your heart moment. When words were sugar-coated, but you know the damage that they did. This week, James goes in a little different direction. Today, James speaks about the distinction between knowledge and wisdom. I suspect that many of you would agree with me that having a lot of information in your head is not the same as possessing wisdom. Just because someone knows a lot of facts does not mean that person is wise. So today, James asks us this question, verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? And as James answers this question for us, it's clear that when he speaks about wisdom, he is not referring to some arbitrary accumulation of information. He's not speaking to holding on to facts or trivia, which is unfortunate for me because the accumulation of trivial information is something I specialize in. Andrea often complains that the least I can do with this information is go on Jeopardy and win her some money. She calls it useless knowledge, but I'm convinced I may need this trivia one day. For instance, if someone breaks into my home and says, I am going to steal all your wedding china unless you can tell me the speed of light, I'm sure my wife would implore me to tell the robber, well, sir, the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. I know that fact. It's gotten lodged in my mind. It just hasn't left. Not so useless after all. For some reason, I remember reading years ago, and it stuck with me, that most car horns honk in the key of F or F sharp. That's true. I know that the electric chair was invented by a dentist. Go figure that one. I know that the corn dog was invented at the Texas State Fair in 1942. I know that in Missouri today it is illegal to play hopscotch on Sundays. You know the Barbie doll toy? I know Barbie's full name. Her name is Barbara Millicent Roberts. Look it up. So what is the accumulated value of all of this useless trivia? Zilch. When James speaks of the value of wisdom, he's not talking about me. He's not talking about some random assemblage of facts in one's brain. He's talking about something else. That's what we're looking at today. With your newfound expertise on James and his penchant for practicality, you're probably not surprised that James has no time for such useless trivia parading around as wisdom. No, for James, wisdom resides deeper. So how do we recognize wisdom? In what ways does it manifest itself? What causes us to say that one person is wise and perhaps another is not? Now, let's recognize that normally when we speak of someone being wise, what I think we mean is that that person has some degree of intelligence, is mature, sees things from different perspectives. And when she makes a decision, it is well reasoned and well thought out. We realize that possessing wisdom is not the same as possessing intelligence, but usually when we discuss wisdom, we're mostly talking about what takes place in the head, in someone's brain, right? But James thinks of wisdom differently. He asks us, who is wise and understanding among you? And his answer may surprise those of us who consider wisdom to be located between the ears. James does not say wisdom comes from how much you know. Who is wise and understanding among you? James answers his own question this way: show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. For James, wisdom is not about intellect. It's about how you live your life. In order to detect wisdom, what we should look at is not what people say or how they think, but how they live. Who is wise? Show by your good life, James says. I've told many Fred Craddock stories from the pulpit, but I've got 100 more of them. Fred, now deceased, was an incredible inspiration for me and my own preaching voice. I heard him preach twice in person. The way he tells a story, he has such a way with words, and the way he paints a picture in his stories, you come to believe, that's my story too. So as I say, Craddock has been an incredible inspiration for me. And I love the story he once told about his younger years as a brash young biblical scholar. He had just finished reading Albert Schweitzer's Quest for the Historical Jesus. He found it to be rather lacking, he said. He took issue with many of the claims that Schweitzer made notes in all of the margins about how he thought he was wrong about this or that. Schweitzer, you may know, was an organist, German theologian, later a medical missionary in Africa. Well, Craddock, at the young age of 20, read his book, found it lacking, and didn't care for it at all. He raised questions with Schweitzer. He challenged all of his ideas. And then one day, some weeks or a month later, Fred read in the paper that Schweitzer was going to be in Cleveland, Ohio, to present a dedication concert for a new organ that a church had built. According to the announcement, Dr. Schweitzer would remain afterwards in the fellowship hall for some conversation. So Craddock bought a Greyhound bus ticket. He had his notebook and Schweitzer's book in hand, and he went to Cleveland. He wrote out all of his questions upon the ride there on the bus. He made references in the pages of the book. He was ready to do religious battle just as soon as he laid eyes on Schweitzer. Well, Fred got there and heard the concert. It was a wonderful organ concert, but he said, "That's not why I was there." As the final note of the concert was played, as the congregation there was applauding Dr. Schweitzer, Craddock rushed down to the fellowship hall and got a seat on the front row. He pulled out his papers, organized his notes. Sitting there with all his notes in his lap, Fred, the 20-year-old zealot, was there to take on the Albert Schweitzer. After a while, Schweitzer came into the fellowship hall, that time 75 years old, shaggy hair, big white mustache, stooped over. Schweitzer thanked everyone for coming, and he said, "You've been so warm and hospitable to me. I thank you for it, and I wish I could stay longer with you, but I must get back to West Africa. I must get back because my people there are sick. They are hungry, they are dying, and I have to go. We have a medical station there, and if there is anyone in this room who has the love of Jesus, would you be prompted by that love to go with me and help out?" Fred says he looked down at his sheet of questions and his theological arguments. He realized now that it all looked so stupid, lacking in wisdom. When he viewed his notes and his questioning in the context of Schweitzer's life, of that moment, Fred said this: "That night I learned once again what it means to be a Christian. And I had hoped that I could be that someday." I suspect that most of us would agree that Albert Schweitzer is rather wise. Why? Because he was a master organist, a medical doctor, a philosopher, biblical scholar, or lecturer, or writer? No. We know he was wise because he showed us his wisdom. In James's words, by his good life. In order to identify wisdom, we look not at what people say, what they think, what they believe, but how they live, James tells us. Who is wise? Show by your good life. So if that's what wisdom is, where does it come from? Are we born with it? Can we study it? Is it something we acquire with experience or practice? Interestingly enough, we've already heard the answer, but we heard it 4 weeks ago. Back in the beginning of James, chapter 1, verse 5, he says this: "If any of you lack wisdom, ask God for it. God who gives to all generously, and it will be given to you." If any of you lack wisdom, ask God for it. It seems that true wisdom is found in one place. God is the source of wisdom, and the good news is that God wants to share it with you. God grants us this wisdom so that we are able to use it for God's mission here on earth. Wisdom, then, it appears to me, is taking our knowledge, not our useless trivia, but taking our knowledge of God's love and grace and mercy, knowledge of who we are, knowledge of our passions and our giftedness, and then using all of that to live lives which seek to mirror God's goodness and serve the children of God. So contrary to my useless knowledge, true wisdom is so valuable beyond measure. And when we live out our God-given wisdom, our families seem to live in harmony. Because wisdom allows us to express our love for each other and even disagree in healthy ways. Wisdom allows coworkers to put their minds together to solve problems rather than clawing at one another to get ahead. Wisdom allows our political leaders, rather than shouting rehearsed sound bites, to sit down with one another, to listen, to work together for all of our citizens. For what does James say in verse 17? The wisdom from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality and hypocrisy. So everyone here, I suspect, would love to be full of more wisdom. So my encouragement to you is rather simple this week. Ask God for it. Ask God not to fill your heart with random knowledge or useless trivia, but to fill your heart with love. For that is both the foundation and the aim of our wisdom, which enables us not to push each other aside in order to get ahead, but to lift each other up in an effort to serve and reach out to all of God's children. Who is wise among you? Show by your good life. Amen.